Morena councillors. Let's make a start of this meeting of the Tiriti Waitangi Komiti. I'll start with the karakia. Manawa mai, te Māori nuku, manawa mai, te Māori rangi, he manawa nui, he manawa tahi, he manawa oro, he whakamaua, kia tina, huie, tai kie. Just a note to councillors that the meeting is being live streamed. Got apology for lateness from Councillor Tupou. I think that's the only councillor who's not here. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the Councillor Saw and Councillor Connolly? All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, none. Right, no public participation that we're aware of. Conflicts of interest, councillors? None that being declared. Right, that takes us to one of three papers. Paper 4, mana whenua representation on this committee, on Te Tiriti o Waitangi Committee. Morning, Brett. Right, do you want to give us a brief introduction to the paper?
Hi. Morena koutou, na mihi mahana, kia koutou e nā rangitira o Pane Matotau, and for our mana whenua partners online, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm presenting today mana whenua representation on the Tiriti Komiti, so seeking approval to progress with recommendation to council for 6 mana whenua partners to join the committee. It seeks to create efficiencies in our approach, including mana whenua and decision making, creating some mutual benefit across partners. And this follows feedback from all 6 of our mana whenua partners supporting the idea of representation on Te Tiriti Komiti. So take the paper as read and take questions.
Questions, councillors, on this paper? Councillor, kia ora, Rawiri.
Oh, kia ora. Hey, just a quick question, and it might be in the paper, and I might have just missed it, Brett, but thank you for the paper. Is there the scope in the current terms of reference to also have alternates, or is it just the one, and if they're not available, ake, amen?
Yeah, good question. Good question, Rawiri. Yes, I think there is scope for alternates. Every other committee has alternates, so there should be no reason why we can't do that. What we can do, one of the councillors will probably lead this, Rawiri, is pass an amendment with that recommendation. Actually filling those positions is probably something we'd have to then just do down the track. Councillor Johnson?
Probably in a similar sort of vein, Rawiri. I've been thinking about this committee quite deeply and thinking about it as a partnership. And I wondered what the scope was for us to have a co-chairing arrangement so that one of our Māori reps is actually co-chairing with you, because that, I think, when we're doing things like that, partnership really matters, and we need to show that partnership. And I, for the life of me, can't think of any reason why we would not do that. So I just want to.
Yeah. So the only reason exists in the Local Government Act, but I think you've got some clarification, Brett, on that precise point.
Yep, we've talked to Team Services. Francis is going to help us out with understanding that one.
You know it's a serious question, Claire, when Francis appears.
Good morning, councillors. So I'm addressing the question here about a co-chair. The Local Government Act is silent about co-chairs, but there's a good body of knowledge within the sector around applying co-chairs in a way that doesn't create a statutory risk. For council, who would be the decision maker here, to identify that there be more than one chair, in essence, two persons co-chair, having the title of co-chair would not be problematic in the context of a body that doesn't have decision-making authority. So the committee does not have decision-making authority. What a co-chair essentially is you have two persons who are identified as leaders of the committee. There can only be one person chairing a meeting at any one time. They would chair meetings on a rotational basis or a sequential basis. And we've got a body of experience since 2009 with Te Puketoi Natural Resources Planning Committee. So for a body that doesn't have decision-making authority, a co-chair arrangement would not be would not pose a risk or a problem.
Supplementary, Claire?
How do we make it happen if other people agree? And I'd be interested to see if other people have views, particularly on Māori rep, how you feel about it, because what you're Gabrielle. It's really important that I know how you feel. It's just a personal thing that I feel quite strongly about.
Yeah, just not to get into an hour's worth of detail. I'm absolutely supportive of this, and it is something that I really would like to see happen, and I think it's really important. So, yeah, I'm very supportive of it, is the short answer. But I think it provides an ability for us to kind of develop an effective partnership from the outset and bring different strength areas to that leadership. And I think it'll work really effectively if we can get this over the line. And I would really love to work with Democratic Services to ensure that we, as we develop this relationship and these systems, that we are doing it in a way that is going to be most effective and doable, I guess. Yeah, bit of detail to work through with our partners in terms of what that's going to look like, but that's the next step.
Okay. Councillor Elder, sorry, and then Councillor Conley.
No, I wonder on the strength of that whether we could consider putting forward Councillor Nakarini as into that co-chair role initially, certainly to give a balanced perspective and sort of cover the wider iwi representation rather than a specific iwi at this stage.
Francis?
Chair, I think at this point it's the policy framework. There'll be a paper needing to go to, there'll be a paper going to council next week, which will be for it to, it's subject to what this committee recommends, endorsing that policy framework. And then to the 12 or 14 May council meeting would be updated terms of reference, potentially appointments for the committee. And as part of that process, the council would determine its appointee. So that's a council determination of who its appointee would be for a co-chair arrangement. There'd also need to be consideration which would be relevant to that process around changes in councillor remuneration should a councillor who's not currently in a chair role becoming a chair, and the impact that would have on the overall allocation of the council's governance pool.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Actually got Councillor Saw, then Councillor Conley.
Thank you for this. I just have a few questions, and perhaps picking up on Councillor Elder's observation. Maybe I'll leave that one to last. I just had some questions about the paper on paragraph 3 about the He Kawenga Rangapu Māori framework. Can you tell Brent? Can you tell me a little bit about how that framework works, and I guess the scope of the review, as it may or may not pertain to councillors to have oversight of that?
I might ask Tans to pick that one up if that's all right.
Kia ora, Councillor. Yeah, the framework, as you can see, was developed in 2016 and led a very basic engagement process around how we work with mana whenua. While its expiry date is not till 2026, it almost has been superseded by a range of other ways of working, hence the time for a review. So I think this framework was really brought into place to implement the Memorandum of Understanding and Partnership that was developed in 2013. So its relevance is fundamentally really important, but it's quite out of fashion, so to speak. Yeah.
And then my next question was around paragraph 21 in terms of the mana whenua representation and how it would strengthen those points from A to E. I guess part of it, I'd just like to understand if someone can speak to how we might see some efficiency and I guess tightening of the scrum in terms of our organisational approach to do the things we've promised to get done. Can anyone speak to that? Because I see that we have a lot of parts of our organisation that we have mana to mana relationships, and we have some really good examples of operational stuff and delivery stuff. So I'm just trying to understand how we're going to synthesize or perhaps streamline that, and is that an opportunity there? So would that be you again, Tanya, that we're speaking to that? I just see an opportunity, so just wanted to hear what the thinking, the whakaaro was around that.
Yeah, okay. So I think part of the opportunity that we're seeing here reflects back to some of the conversations that have been going on with mana whenua over the last triennium and into this, which is around making sure that there's that alignment between right from the governance down to the operational space. Our mana whenua partners have said they want to be in those spaces, but we really need strength at the governance, setting the direction, setting the approaches so that the others can then start to come into place. The Tiriti Komiti and the opportunity for mana whenua to sit around the table and provide really clear guidance around that starts to create efficiencies as we step down through the subsequent layers.
Cool. So I guess then I'd like to understand how this committee might help to influence, shape or support some of the actual delivery aspects that sit in other committees. So for example, not to say that everything happens in the tile space, but a lot of the work and the funding and the partnerships happen there. So what could we see there, and how would that relationship work, looking at the chair of that committee? Yeah. And how would we, and I guess the thing is, how do we monitor that performance?
Kapai. Yeah, I really like those questions as well, because I think that's, again, speaks back to the opportunities for the committee to start to shape up and lead out on some of those discussions. Measurement is really key. Being able to look at the council's obligations, responsibilities, and be able to provide oversight of that will make a big difference. The ability to bring matters of high significance or interest to mana whenua into the Tiriti Komiti space to test before it goes out to other committees can create some synergies there as well. I think there's a certain element of needing to work with our partners, particularly around the terms of reference and how it's going to work out, and then the work program to really see the detail of the benefits that will come from the space. But certainly, again, that operation, that connection between the governance and the operations and the ability to create clear direction is going to be helpful.
Cool. And then I guess, yeah, I'll leave that. My question would be around, I don't know if this is time to sort of talk about the recommendations that we have. Is there, and this might be a Francis question again, where I would imagine how the proposal for mana whenua representation is going to work on this committee, that timing could perhaps, it'll happen in its own time and order, but in the meantime, perhaps we're not going to have a decision on going straight to co-chair. Is there a way we could perhaps rework that recommendation where we request the council to consider co-chairs?
Already done.
Right to. Was I not listening or something?
No, we can amend the recommendations
Yes.
that we've got on the table.
So we can just go co-chair, and then at a later date, who those co-chairs are, we can flush that out as we have those mana to mana
Sure.
conversation.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
my questions are finished.
Does raise a question for clarification, and that is, I'm quite clear about how we elect at the full council the council's co-chair, if you like. But how is the other co-chair? How does that person get elected? Brett or Francis or appointed?
And also, don't ask me to rewrite the recommendation because, as we know,
No, it's being looked at.
Sorry, can I just, before Francis asks, just for point of clarification, the point I was making is actually, and maybe Yardley you brought up a whole in what I'm suggesting, but my suggestion was a co-chair from among the councillors.
Yeah.
I guess I just saying co-chair, and then how we.
Yeah.
It's sort of open to, rather than being really, really prescriptive, and in the work we can decide that, as opposed to locking ourselves in. Francis, please.
I've been waiting a really long time, but so my amendment would read at 4.2 to provide for committee co-chairs and bring back details of how this would work to the next full council meeting. So I think things like the appointment process would be things that need to be worked out that we can't work out around this table.
Yeah.
I also have another question.
Okay, so can before you go, Francis, can I just ask Councillor Johnson? Can you just clarify what you were raising it?
Yeah. So, like all of the other committees, we end up with a chair and a deputy chair. In this particular instance, I'm suggesting that the deputy chair, I believe is you at the moment, become instead the co-chair, so that it is much more in partnership. I feel that we need a partnership, and I think mana whenua
I think
need to see that. That's what I was
meaning.
meaning.
I think that aligns with what we're thinking here.
It's not my preferred solution. Well, my preferred solution is that mana whenua would appoint their own chair, and that may be Shamir or it may be someone else. But again, I don't think we can work through those details now because we need more advice on that.
So I was going to say, I think this issue is then settled out in a separate paper that comes up to the full council. But the issue that you're effectively referring to the full council is the idea of co-chairing. And just to be clear, so I'm understanding this, it's one of those co-chairs comes up somehow from amongst the councillors on the committee, and the other co-chair comes up from amongst the iwi representatives on the committee. Is that? Do I have?
That's certainly not what I meant.
That's what I meant. Yes.
Okay. So what did you mean?
So I believe it should follow the same format as all of the other committees. I also think that our representatives, our Māori representatives, have already been placed and elected, and their faith given to them, and that's why I feel quite strongly that we stick to the same process, that we don't throw it open. I do believe our two reps have been democratically put here to represent us, and they deserve the respect of that democratic representation. But Shamir, you may be more open to this, but it's not what I meant.
Yeah, okay. Shamir, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. I understand what you're saying, and I absolutely understand what you're saying. My preference would be that we do kind of step through a process where we work in partnership and have iwi sitting in partnership with the council eventually. But I think at this stage, I'm quite happy to kind of hold that position, that co-chair position, with Darren. I'm assuming you'll stick around. But
no.
There's a lot to kind of work through, and I think that this is the initial step, and it's really, really important that we have those discussions with our mana whenua whānau, and they will no doubt have processes within themselves and how that other appointment will be made. Is that making sense? Like,
I'm relatively comfortable with that, but I still believe in an election process, and I don't see why it should be different for this than anyone else. This is a really important committee, and I think that we need to make sure that we're quite clear about it. It's the same with this paper. I don't feel that we've got a very clear work plan of where we're going, and we need a lot of work underneath, and there's a lot of council process underneath.
Yeah, we
as
do.
well.
We absolutely do need to do that mahi. There's a lot of mahi to come in getting that right. And we absolutely have to fulfil our obligations in terms of that, what our processes are as council, but equally there are other processes and responsibilities and accountabilities that we have to also meet. So we're just basically allowing them the space to do that.
So I think we're getting into debate. What I suggest is that I think we have. I'm going to throw the recommendation onto the screen. So we have a recommendation that I think probably more reflects the position that Councillor Connolly has put on the table. But that's not to say that we can't have a recommendation that puts the alternative proposition, but you would...
I propose we just, at this stage, we just reduce for two to provide for co-chairs, and then the staff have got the gist of this conversation, so they can bottom out those options at the next paper, because otherwise we'll be having to have that debate here, and then we'll have to re-have that debate at council.
Okay, so to provide for co-chairs
and nothing more.
To provide for co-chairs, and are we saying alternates as well? Yeah. Oh, sorry, it is both. Okay, plus alternates. Yeah. Okay, so if we provide for co-chairs, it feels like the paper gets green lighted at the moment, but the substantive conversation still comes back at the full council meeting as to which of these two options is actually going to pass through. Okay, Francis.
I just make a comment with regard to the last highlight. The next council meeting is next week. There won't be time to do that for the next week's meeting. It'll be the 14th of May meeting where we'll bring that level of detail. What's proposed at this stage is that council next week would receive a paper recommending that council endorse the policy framework that this committee is considering today. And then the next step would be for council on the 14th of May to consider the detail and sign off on the detail. Yeah. So it'll be to either a future council meeting or to the May 26th council meeting.
Okay, cool.
Yes, 14 May 26. Yes. Oh, sorry, 20. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do I have a move? Sorry, yes, Councillor Conley.
Sorry, my question is not a little specific question. It's more about how does this relate to overall our engagement with mana whenua. So I absolutely support having mana whenua on Te Tiriti Committee, and I support having them as co-chair, because I think that will help direct the agenda of this committee and be able to incorporate a lot more of mana whenua priorities in the council work program. I guess I'm just unclear as to how this sits with wider mana whenua engagement. So we've thrown around a lot of ideas over the last kind of 6 months around how mana whenua engagement would happen more widely at council, and we've had wānanga, and then we've had wānanga that hasn't happened. So it's just how this sits in that wider context. Where do we see mana whenua having roles on other committees such as the Long-Term Plan Committee, or will this supersede that? Will this take more of a strategy focus? All those conversations we've had, I haven't really got clarity on where we landed with that and how this is going to play out in the wider context.
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, we've been talking about too the role of the Tiriti Komiti inside the LTP and other really important work that we do in the strategic level. And to be honest, it makes sense for it to come through one committee. However, I guess that's something we wānanga with mana whenua as well as we go forward to understand what best suits, I guess, the timing and capacity of them inside the space. Also, the next paper around mana whakahono also provides an engagement level formalised as well. So, yeah.
I guess if we don't have separate mana whenua representation on the LTP committee, and this is the forum with which mana whenua feed into our work program, then we will have to adjust the agenda of this committee to ensure that they can input into the LTP decisions. And that will take this committee in a somewhat different direction. Not that that's bad, per se. I guess it is just different to the way this committee has operated in the past. And so I guess I just wanted to check that everyone was, that was intended and that everyone is kind of comfortable with that direction.
Yeah, I think you've picked up really well the opportunity for that change for the committee, and that when you're saying that ability to determine a quite deliberate work program that supports the wider engagement that goes on across the different levels of council as well. So, yeah.
I think what we don't want to have happen here is continually changing the terms of references for committees. I wonder whether there's enough scope within the so recommendation 4 is quite pointed because it actually just lists out the things that we do want to amend. But when you come back with the terms of reference, whether there's enough scope for officers to actually address that issue of the LTP in particular, and is the Tiriti Committee a place to refer LTP conversations or issues to, and then back to the council, or had you envisaged that we would have a separate LTP committee? Because at the moment, unless we don't do anything, the LTP considerations will be at the full council level. Nigel, did you want to lean into that?
Well, I'll address that. My primary reason I wanted to speak, I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity around recommendation 4 before it's moved, and to provide for co-chairs. Just listening to the discussion, there's clearly some options around co-chairs, so that's, I think that the recommendation's fine, but I wouldn't mind some clarity as to what you are looking for us to recommend to council, because there'll clearly be a discussion around that, which is absolutely fine. Is that an options analysis around co-chair options, or simply a statement of what these options could be? Because that's quite a wide brief at the moment. So I just wouldn't mind a little bit of clarification from the committee as to what we can come back with to fulfil the requirements of that recommendation.
I get the sense that it's 2 sets of options, Nigel. I'm not sure that it needs a lot of analysis as such. I think positions are reasonably clear on this, and it's for councillors to actually settle out as long as the options are clear that we're getting them. So one set of options is the co-chairs come from around the members currently around this table. The other is that the co-chairs are a councillor from around this table, and the second co-chair and the alternates are from the iwi representatives.
Right, thank you, that's really clear, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. And then secondly, around the role of this committee in terms of an LTP committee or such like, obviously when the council came together there was quite a lot of discussion around your committee structure, and there was intended to be a couple of wānanga to flesh this out. My interpretation of where we've landed, that if there is representation on this committee from mana whenua, that would be the sounding board where I think a lot of the business of council could be debated and discussed, and that could have been fed into quite deliberately into our planning processes, particularly the long-term plan and annual plans in subsequent years. I think that would reflect back how we've been asked to engage with mana whenua in this committee.
I guess the question, though, it is specifically, do we need to amend the terms of reference to allow for that discussion to happen? And perhaps that could be part of the advice that comes back to the 14th of May meeting, looking at, given what we're intending, that this is the entry point for mana whenua to discuss a number of things, including LTP, we may need to amend the terms of reference.
I agree with you, Councillor. We'll have to look at the terms of reference as part of trying to set this committee up.
So more specifically, Nigel, do you need a recommendation today to do that, or is that something you can do of your own volition?
Well, we'll take that away. I don't think we need a recommendation, but we've clearly understood that to allow this committee to work in the way that the committee wants it and is intended. We'll have to look at the terms of reference, and we'll bring that back as well at the same time we bring the paper around co-chairs, etc.
Okay.
If we decide to have mana whenua reps, will they also be eligible for compensation in terms of their time and remuneration?
Yes, they are. Francis will respond to that.
Under Council's policy on appointment of external persons to committee, the default position is that appointees to council committees are entitled to receive a daily meeting fee and reimbursement of either mileage or public transport costs. It's a matter for the council to determine if it wishes to adopt a position that's different to that default position.
Okay. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations that are on the screen? So I've got Councillor Makarini and Councillor Connolly. Do either of you wish to speak to the paper? I
guess I'm really happy with where these resolutions have landed. I think that gives us time to bring back a more fulsome discussion and talk about it as a full council. But again, my preference is for mana whenua to be have agency over who they wish to represent them at this forum. With all due respect to my colleague, Councillor Makarini, she is not a mana whenua rep. She is elected by people on the Māori roll, and she happens to be mana whenua, but she might not have been. So I think it's important to distinguish the role of mana whenua as our Tiriti partner and allow them agency over who they wish to put forward to chair. But that's a discussion for the 14th of May, so I look forward to it.
Other councillors? No. So I might just add something to this discussion. More than happy with the approach that we've ended up here. I think it is appropriate that this is a conversation that plays out with all members around the regional council table. I note that we have a co-chairing arrangement for Te Upu Kotaio. Te Upu Kotaio is currently in abeyance, but I was once, along with Hikatia Ropata before she was a councillor, I was once the co-chair of that committee. So we do have some legacy in terms of how this operates. We do also have, with the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee, an example of where the chairing role sits with one of the parties, perhaps the council representative. It then falls to the iwi representatives to nominate the deputy and vice versa. And we've just had a flip in that last week where the chairing moved from mana whenua to councillors, in this case me. So we do have some sort of prior awareness and history with different models of representation on the council. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed? None. Thank you. Paper passed. The second paper is paper 5 and it relates to really two applications that we've had for mana whakahono arohe agreements. One from Te Atiawaki Whakarongotai Charitable Trust and the other from Ngā Hapu o Otaki Incorporated Society. I think from memory these are the first that we've had in this region, but clearly not the first around the country. I think there are quite a reasonable number of these in other regions. I think in part, if I can just reflect, it's partly a consequence that we have been a little bit more progressive in the south of the North Island in terms of having other relationship instruments and what have you, which has suggested that the mana whakahono arohi was perhaps overtaken a little bit, but its time has clearly come for at least two iwi/hapu who can see the merits in this. Take us away and tell us what the pathway looks for these two proposals.
Morena koutou. Ina mana whenua o te rohi nei, tēnā koutou. Me mihi ka tika ki a koutou, kua tai mai nei, ki te tautoko i tēnei kaupapa. Ko wai māua, ko Anna Nichols tōku ingoa. I'm one of the directors in Tonga Whiriwhiri, here to support this paper.
Kia ora koutou, ko Tawhiwhirangi Skipper tōku ingoa, TAF for short, and I'm in Anna's team, so I have been supporting the mana whakahono arohi kaupapa.
We just want to begin with acknowledging and thanking our mana whenua partners, in particular Ngā Hapu o Otaki and Te Atiawa ki Whakarongotai, who are present today and representing their formal invitations. We also acknowledge our wider partners from across the region as well, who are online and who are here to continue to support this kaupapa as well. So the paper before you responds to formal iwi and hapu-led invitations to enter into mana whakahono arohi, discussions with us at Greater Wellington. These invitations are statutory in nature and reflect mana whenua aspirations for clear, enduring and consistent partnership pathways with Council. As this is the first time Greater Wellington and our mana whenua partners have progressed mana whakahono arohi, today's focus is not on approving agreements or settling content. Rather, it's about setting the foundations, ensuring the right governance, delegations and process clarity are in place so partnership engagement with mana whenua can proceed lawfully, consistently and in good faith. Just before we talk through using the presentation, we just want to outline what committee has been asked to recommend to Council. I need to briefly note two clarifications since the paper was finalised. So following further internal discussions, officers proposed a minor but important amendment to recommendation 3B. This clarifies that Council is both the decision maker and the adopter of any mana whakahono arohi agreements, recognising that these are related but distinct actions. So the amendment recommendation now reads, it's on the screen, recommend proposed mana whakahono arohi agreements to Council for decision and adoption. So this refinement confirms the Tiriti Komiti's role as one of oversight and recommendation with final decisions resting with Council. The updated wording is highlighted on the screen. Yep. Second, we also want to clarify a technical error. So just bear with us. We're learning about this process as well. So we noticed this before the paper was published. So we're just stating the error now. But specifically paragraph 12, attachment 1 and slide 5 of the presentation, it's relating to the 90-day time frame. So just want to clarify what this means. The Act frames this requirement in relation to the end of the traineum, so rather than from receipt of an invitation. A formal clarification is proposed so the statutory position is accurately reflected. This does not change our intended approach to early engagement, but we just wanted to note that that is an error. With those clarifications noted today, committee has been asked to recommend to full Council that mana whakahono arohi invitations received are noted and that discussions are commencing. That Te Tiriti Komiti is confirmed as the appropriate governance body to oversee this kaupapa on behalf of Council, and that delegations to the Chief Executive and Te Pou Whakarai are approved to enable statutory hui, wānanga and early stage process work to proceed with substantive matters returning to governance. No decisions on agreement, content, scope or resourcing are sought today. With that framing, I'll now hand over to Tawhiwhirangi, who will take you through the presentation covering the statutory content, governance approach and next steps.
Lucas, yeah, thank you. Kia ora koutou. Can you just go to slide 3 or get through? Oh, lovely, thank you. I don't think I've ever been given the charging post for this before. So these are the things we're going to cover today. Just taking you a slower step through because we're all new to the space. So as Darren introduced us, we have 2 formal invitations so far. One is from Atiawa ki Whakarongotai and the second is from Ngā Hapu o Otaki. We are expecting even up to 7. We don't know for sure until they arrive, but we have 6 formal mana whenua partners, so it could be a big number. We'll wait and see, but we will keep you informed as they come in. As soon as they come in, the 60 days, the clock starts, and by 60 days we have to be having a hui with our partners, and there's a process for that which I've added in the attachment. So today we're asking you to help us decide on the governance as well as supporting our officers to undertake all the proceedings in between so that we can keep in time with our statutory process requirements.
Just stop there, Councillor Conley.
So I sort of don't understand what this will mean in practice. So I guess, as far as I'm concerned, this is a framework that is outlined in the Resource Management Act as a way to have a relationship with mana whenua and obligations on us to include our mana whenua partners in decision making, etc., etc., etc. But given we already try to do that, what will we see as being different from for an iwi or hapu that's in this relationship, and will it give those 2 iwi status upgrade above our other mana whenua partners until they choose to come on board as a mana whakahono o rohi?
So each agreement is based on boundaries. So you're limited within your boundaries once you've established those through the process. There are a lot of changes from the RMA to the new planning bill and the new natural environment bill. And so that affects mana whenua participation. And so those changes can be represented through the mana whakahono arohe. We've also got, especially with our first 2, they are both unsettled iwi, and so they need to have some kind of guarantee of their participation rights within the system. So this formalises through the statutory process their what they might need in the future. I think we've established all our agreements under previous environments, but we have to be thinking forward. Yeah.
I'm absolutely supportive, given that the Act establishes these and we've had the approach like kei te pai. I guess I'm still a little bit unclear as to what's going to be different. But
I think if I could just venture a response on that, if you're on the West Coast, this will be a huge step change. But if you're in parts of the country where mechanisms have already been playing out over time, it won't be such a big change. In fact, what the mana whakahono arohi may do is actually reflect back many of the things that we've already got in play and how they play out.
Yeah, in the report we've mentioned that this isn't a duplication but actually more strengthening of what current commitments we have, but also how we might add as well. And I just want to mention it is a mechanism for mana whenua participation, but participation across planning, policy development, decision making and implementation processes, but it's done in a way where it's through wānanga discussions about scope and what that might look like. And then, of course, we stepped out the internal process that we would have to do around negotiations. And of course, that how that work is progressing will come through into the Tiriti Committee. But any agreement or decision points will then go to full council for that decision.
Sorry, I'm going to just add one more. So although we're looking at it as an opportunity for our unsettled iwi, a lot of settled iwi were on the basis of what was guaranteed in the RMA, so particularly Part 2. So they will be needing to think about what they need with the removal of that. Okay, I'll just
move on.
Yeah, kia ora. I think we've already talked about all of this, so I'm not sure we need to go there again. But what we're trying to say is that we have our current agreements in place. What we're trying to do is just, again, strengthen again, fill what might not be foreseen in the coming future of the resource management space. To be very clear, it does not replace treaty settlements. So this is where the clarification has happened. So on the bottom in the blue, it says, oh gosh, I'm so blind. Something around 60 working days. The ones that were published online had 4 boxes and it talked about 90 days. Is it in the middle? Within 90 days, yeah. That's the error that we were talking about initially. Okay, so these are mana whenua-led invitations. Council can invite mana whenua to have mana whakahono arohe, just so we know that if we want to do that. And we must act within good faith and meet our statutory timeframes. So this is both of our first time progressing mana whakahono. The approach taken now establishes expectations for future requests. It's critical to demonstrate genuine Te Tiriti partnership from the outset and support the process with clear governance, agreed delegations and consistency in process and communications. So we're under quite tight timeframes given we've got komiti and then we've got to flip around and have papers for council ready by tomorrow to make sure that we're getting both oversight from komiti and then up to council for decision. We will have to do this for all of our mana whakahono arohe for the whole process. So yeah, we're trying to make sure that we're nice and clear from the start.
So can I just ask a question
Yeah.
on the other iwi? You mentioned that there might be in total 6 or 7. So how are they organising? Whereabouts are they in the process of getting their proposals to us?
So some are more ready than others that we know of. Speaking to our 2 Honohono partnership managers, I have Times putting a hand up. So I'll just pass over to Tanya.
Kia ora. Just some have indicated verbally that they wish to proceed. Right. Some are waiting for their trust board decisions to be made in the next month or so. So yeah, they're at various stages, but we've indicated that there'll be a number that will come through.
But they will all come in within quite a short period of time, within the next 2 months or so?
Yeah, they are aware of the time frame at the other end, which is June for changes.
To the Act, yeah. Okay.
So we anticipate that the new resource management legislation will come into play around maybe July onwards. And so we're trying to make sure that we are initiated before that date because that was under the proposals from the bills.
Right.
Okay, these are the decisions for you guys to be making today. So decision 1 is around governance. Recommend to council that Te Tiriti Komiti's terms of references be amended to provide oversight of the mana whakahono arohe engagement and guide the development of the agreements on behalf of council. Decision 2 is delegations. Recommend to council that authority be delegated to the CE and Pau Whakarai in their own individual capacity to convene hui and wānanga in line with the statutory requirements, agree scope and process collaboratively with mana whenua and progress interim arrangements where appropriate, where agreed. Yeah, I think we might be
okay.
Komiti? Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Makalini.
I just have a little pārtai on the on the decision. If we go back one. So I just was wanting to know, and I know we're just this is all new and we're all feeling our way and we don't have all the answers yet. But I was just wondering if we could get a bit of clarification around what your thoughts are in terms of particularly the delegations. So just some clarity around that, how that will work in terms of this committee's involvement and, whether it's an exclusive kind of delegation to the Chief Executive and Te Pou Whakarai, or if there is the ability for the committee and governance involvement in these processes, like the hui and the wānanga and that sort of stuff.
Kia ora, Councillor. So we see the committee as oversee the engagement, ensure the process aligns with Te Tiriti and recommends matters to council if need be. Decision-making points will need to go to full council. But in terms of the delegation to officers, this is only procedural and preparatory steps being delegated. The overall decision will be with full council.
No, I understand that. I'm just seeing where we can actually jump in and be hoha. But it's not I understand the formal delegation. It was just clarification on what the practice might be in terms of the committee and governance involvement, particularly in those hui and the relationships with mana whenua, if that's something that they will want to.
Nigel?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Good question. Look, if committee chose to accept these recommendations, certainly for my delegation, also to Te Pou Whakarai, I would imagine that we would be engaging with the committee chairs as part of the process of us exercising our delegations. So we wouldn't initiate any conversation, etc., until the chair or co-chairs, however that ends up, is actually across what we're proposing to do, and which would allow us to exercise our delegations with the support of the committee chairs.
Right. Councillor Tupou.
Is this discussion or questions?
Questions? Oh, you could turn it into a question.
How would I call this into a question? There's your question.
Is it fair to say?
Is it fair to say that this is the appropriate, ko tēnei te taumata o te i Wainganui nei, that this is the appropriate summit, this committee, for the partners of whakahono arohi to meet in the multilateral sense. Every other week we have bilateral discussions, be it the Whitireia Park and other opportunities. But this is where those iwi reps come and participate and are part of the kōrero that may have ramifications for our respective iwi in terms of, as the chair mentioned, LTP, etc., etc. So that's my question is, obviously due diligence has gone into considering where is the appropriate place to sit. And would there be sufficient workload, and I know that there's a lot of work behind the scenes, for this committee? Is it at an appropriate level or is it too much?
Kia ora, Councillor. This is one kaupapa that can be part of your overall work program, and given if the decision is made that mana whenua are represented in the committee, then it makes sense that this will be the natural space that mana whakahono would have that oversight through this governing group. I think what Brett had mentioned before about the different layers, so you've got governance and then the operational side. I think the procedural part is within operational space, and that's where that process, scope, negotiations will happen. But oversight through this governing body, we would bring into the space how that's progressing, what that looks like, but with the hope that mana whenua representation is also here to receive that.
So just clarification on the two decisions. Yeah. The first is whether we agree that this is the appropriate place for mana whakahono arohi to sit. Mm-hmm. And then the second is to enable the operations to undertake that mahi.
Correct, and that's recommendations up to full council for that decision.
Right. Other questions?
I was just going to clarify, sorry, there are still mana arohi, so discussions around with mana whenua around kaupapa relating to their rohi would remain in place at mana ki te mana levels. You wouldn't necessarily bring them into a bigger strategic kōrero if it wasn't totally attached to their particular work, so still mana arohi stands.
So a question I don't even sort of want to ask, but I will anyway. One of the things you mentioned earlier was that one of the issues I think you need to come to here is to sort of identify with the hapu or iwi what the rohi is that the agreement is going to be contained to. Can you foresee any issues with that in terms of the time frame? I think is probably what I'm more thinking about, not the fact that we might not get there, but the actual time frame for doing that.
Potentially, but if for everyone's benefit, I think there will need to be some agreement. Otherwise, we don't make the deadlines. So
right.
It's a hard job. I know they're not easy. They play out over years at times. And I'm glad to not be the one making the decisions there.
But presumably the agreements can acknowledge overlaps in iwi areas of interest.
Yeah, it's up to those iwi with intersections to be having those discussions and agreements.
Councillor Elder.
Yeah, just on the matter of timing, I just wonder if I can put the question out there: is this actually entirely appropriate at the moment, given that we know there's substantial local government reform coming up? There's a good chance this council won't even exist in a couple of years' time. Should we responsibly be entering into such an agreement, or should this be deferred until we know what the future of local government in the Wellington region looks like?
We're actually obligated to respond to this. This is under the statutory, and it's absolutely in place because of the changes that are being made, that it's imperative we get through this now. That's my opinion.
So I think the other side of that coin is that mana whakahono rohe agreements can be launched at territorial authorities as well. So because it's an RMA instrument, the RMA regime continues into the future. If these agreements are in place, then they would be in place for the future. So they're effectively grandparented under the RM legislation.
If I could just add that the two iwi that are in this paper have also initiated with their local council as well.
Oh, okay, right, didn't know that. Councillor Tupou.
These two iwi, have these discussions and engagement been going on for some time?
Kia ora. We have received the invitations. We have yet to start formal hui along this. I know that our partnership managers are in conversations all the time to understand the process, but no formal engagement so far. Just the response back from Councillor Ponta on receipt of the invitations.
Okay, further questions?
Chair, could I just...
Yeah. Nigel, then Councillor Duffy.
I just wonder whether Tanya or someone could just provide a short explanation, because it's a very good question wherever it came from, around the fact that this is being initiated with GW and also the territorial authorities. That actually then ties us up with the territorial authorities, Kapiti Coast in this case, and we would intend that we actually engage together, wouldn't we?
Kia ora Nigel. Yes, we have done significant work in regards to our collaboration with local council alongside mana whenua, so we're hoping to come together as a collective of councils and mana whenua to talk through in wānanga, because it is both councils' first exposure to te mana whakahono arohi, and work together through this process. So it's really around collaboration on every level and layer to just make sure enduring partnership throughout this process continues, despite, I guess, the climate that we're working in.
We had mentioned at paragraph 28 that we've also these have also been sent to Kapiti District Council, and while early, we intend to have discussions together.
Nice. Right. If there are... Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor Duthie.
Thank you. Question the source of mana whakahono arohi is the Resource Management Act in terms of the statutory framework, and so it's therefore primarily designed for codifying Resource Management Act planning and things. However, if I read the paper rightly, it's not strictly confined to that. We can, by agreement, broaden the scope effectively to include other areas of our partnership, be it public transport maybe, or other areas of non-regulatory activity and so on. So this, so first question is, am I reading that right? My second question is, does that mean that the scope aspect of this is actually quite important because it's quite flexible? And I wonder how appropriate it is to delegate questions of scope to officers at this stage, that there might be a role for the Tiriti Komiti to have quite active oversight on that scope question, because that scope will then have to come back to council, and it would be a shame if officers negotiated this scope and then council eventually rejected that scope. I mean, that would be a relationship issue, so that needs early engagement from governance. What's your thoughts on that?
Kia ora. Yes, you're right about the scope being broader than RMA potentially, and there's a really good example of it with the Tūrangi Tukua mana whakahono with Taupo District Council. As to the likes of Te Tiriti Komiti members being part of the more operational matters, I know that you guys had a working group, council had a working group when it came to the RM sub, and so there is potential for that depending on what you prefer. We're just putting forward what we see as the normal process, but totally up to you what you decide that works, because having conversations that we are more certain will progress in the right direction is key.
I'm not a committee member, so I'm not going to suggest anything. I'm just putting it out there.
Okay. Any other questions? Right. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this paper? Councillor Makariri and Councillor Saw. Do either of you wish to speak to the paper? No. Others? This is your great opportunity, Councillor Tupou. Unless you exhausted yourself with your questions.
Do we want to reflect Councillor Duffy's question? Because at the moment the recommendation 3C2 says that we're going to delegate the process and scope for negotiations. So yeah, either in consultation with the chairs or
Actually, we'll speak to that. Oh, sorry. I think it is good to put the chairs in.
Continues off. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, we'll be more than happy to have after consultation with the co-chairs. It's a precedent we've used in other committees in the past, and it works very well. It codifies what you're talking about, what Councillor Duthie's spoken about, and also allows in that conversation with the co-chairs, if there's any other bespoke things that need to happen, like a subgroup or a small working group, then that can be done as well. So completely comfortable with that.
Bear with us a second. Those people are online. No. Right. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay, right. Is everybody else comfortable with that?
I would like to speak to the motion, if I may.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. I'm really pleased to be supporting this decision because I think it shows our maturity and commitment to being exemplar it's moving towards us wanting to be exemplar partners within the, I guess, political operational environment that we're in. What I see this as an opportunity for us to really stake our accountability to everyone in the community, as well as our mana whenua partners, but to take all our community with us to demonstrate how we are going to get things done. I hope that it brings a clarity, a transparency, and a way of working that we can show our community and our staff of the direction we want to go in. And for the time that I've been in council, I think this starts to sharpen up all the sometimes disparate ways that we've been working. So I hope that we really take this opportunity as an organisation and as a partner to move in that direction.
Okay, Councillor Tupou.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. I just want to recognise ngā hapu o Taki and Aotearoa ki whakarongotai. And these are iwi that have spent some considerable time in recent years in building up their capability and capacity in the pre-settlement environment. And so, this is not something that's just happening overnight. These aren't groups of people that have just come off the street. These are people that we already work with in some of our discussions and engagement with iwi already. So commending this this paper up to council for final approval and recognising the work that's gone in and that these iwi are undertaking on their side as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Okay. Anybody else? Nobody else? All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed? None. Okay, paper passed unanimously. Thank you. Last paper, which is a for information paper, an update on the mana whenua submissions on the resource management bills. Morning. How are you?
Morena koutou. As the Chair has said, this is a paper for your information as an update on mana whenua submissions on the resource management reform bills, so the planning bill and the natural environment bill. Council approved its own submission on the 12th of February. There were questions at that time about support for and what our mana whenua submissions were also saying in order to support. You'll see attached to the paper submissions from mana whenua entities in the Greater Wellington region. I thought it was important to attach each of those to be able to be read individually as a resource for you as members of the Tiriti Komiti and wider councillors. In each of the submissions you'll see outlining of and ngā mihi nui ki a koutou ngā mana whenua, these submissions of yours that are here in front of us, and some important to bring this to you. When you read the submissions, you'll also see outlining a whakapapa of vision, of values for each of our partners. So I strongly encourage going through to have a review of those. Some of the context that's in the paper, the RMA, 30 years old, was developed, including in response to a number of tribunal findings that shaped the provisions that were in the RMA. As outlined, Māori brought claims before the tribunal in relation to the treaty consistency of the current RMA, and there's 30 years of findings about that. And as outlined in the background too, the proposals in the current bill, as outlined in Greater Wellington's submission, proposed to remove several parts of the RMA that the Crown itself has said to the tribunal were important for treaty consistency, like Part 2 provisions, like the partnership mechanisms, including mana whakahono, the ability to initiate in the future, and things like the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. So each of the submissions are there. Some of the submissions also do raise matters that are currently before the courts in terms of Potaio National Iwi Leaders Forum have, through Waikato Tainu, we've taken proceedings to the High Court in relation to amending Yaramei without informed and prior informed consent for amending settlements. And also the other case before the courts for Waimana Whenua in terms of fresh water and seeking to for the Crown to fulfil the commitments it's made about addressing Māori rights and interests in fresh water. Something that we've done in addition is attachments 11 and 12, which include an analysis and look across those submissions and 4 points for particular themes. So mana whenua views about the upholding of settlements, around the importance of part 2, maintaining that. All those themes are outlined, organised in the words of mana whenua, that as Greater Wellington we take the next steps in reform, and noting this is one of a broader set of reforms, that as decision makers you have that information as we move ahead in the powers that are delegated to us and our utility responsibilities to respond appropriately to what our partners have said as we implement the future system. Yeah, happy to take any questions or comments.
Thanks, Carl. Councillor Duthie.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate this information. It's a long read, but it's a valuable read. Aware that the Select Committee has only heard a small fraction of submitters on this bill, and Greater Wellington was fortunate to be one of the ones chosen to submit. How many of our mana whenua partners or of these submissions were actually able to be heard in person by the Select Committee, and how many were excluded?
Yes, so we do refer to that in the papers. Only 2 of our partners who have been invited, so Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira and Atiawa ki Whakarongotai. So those links to the videos, to those oral submissions are on in the paper, linked and footnoted in the paper, but for example none of our partners in Wairarapa were invited to speak. And I suppose something else I would note from those in the written submissions and those who submitted orally was the support for other mana whenua partners who weren't given the opportunity to speak on what are significant changes. So only 2 of our partners were invited to speak. Thus the importance of also bringing the information to you as councillors for next steps.
In fact, just for context, only one iwi on the eastern seaboard was invited to speak, and that was Ngāti Porou. So you have to go all the way up to Gisborne before you get anybody. The questions? No? Okay. Thanks, Carl, for that update. Useful resource for us, and from at our end, a very well received presentation that we gave as a regional council, I understand. So well supported by iwi as well.
Yeah, and to acknowledge our partners online for the work that was undertaken in developing the submissions originally, and the work to convene that and share our responses and acknowledgements. In the next steps, it is noted that there may be other forum or other decision-making places you'd like this information to be shared to, and I'll leave that with in your hands.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the meeting. So let me just end with a karakia. Kia tau, te rangamari, he runga, he raro, he roto, ki waho, au ki te aorangi, ka whakamaua kia tina, tina hui e taiki. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody online.
Mihi nui kia koutou. Ka kite.